Knowledge of the complications of otitis media is very important both for your examinations and also in your clinical practice. I have taken a class on complications of otitis media and explained the route of spread and also classification into intratemporal, extratemporal and intracranial complications. One of the commonest and important intratemporal complication is labyrinthitis. This is often asked in exam. It's very important also. Before going to the subject in detail, I am taking 1 minute to share happy news with you. That is our channel, that is Dr. Sujata's ENT classes, has been listed and in the 11th position in an international ENT blog, that is Feedspot ENT blog site. I have given that in the description box. You can see that and expand your knowledge related to recent advances in ENT. Okay. Regarding this labyrinthitis, I will explain the 3 types of labyrinthitis. Then under each heading, the causes, the clinical features, investigations to be done and also the treatment of each type of labyrinthitis. Okay. So what are the 3 types of labyrinthitis? One, it is labyrinthine fistula, and second, it is serous labyrinthitis, and third is suppurative labyrinthitis. Okay. So we can deal with each one. The first one is labyrinthine fistula. Okay. Otherwise called circumscribed labyrinthitis or paralabyrinthitis or perilabyrinthitis. What is this? You know that fistula is a tube with 2 ends open to a surface. So labyrinthine fistula is an opening from the middle ear into the labyrinth. So the commonest cause of a labyrinthine fistula is cholesteatoma. Okay, it's an otitis media with the cholesteatoma. Okay, and in that case, the site of involvement or the commonest site of involvement in case of cholesteatoma is lateral semicircular canal. Okay, where is this lateral semicircular canal coming? Lateral semicircular canal is seen in the medial wall of middle ear and it is very close to the attic, and attic is the commonest site of development of a cholesteatoma. So because of the proximity to the attic, the lateral semicircular canal is the commonest site of a labyrinthine fistula formation. So the commonest cause of a labyrinthine fistula is cholesteatoma, and there are also some other causes. They are the primary malignancies of the temporal bone. Malignancy is always bone erosion will be there. So primary malignancies of the temporal bone, or there can be secondary deposit, metastasis to the temporal bone, or the cause may be glomus jugulare tumors, or lower cranial nerve neuromas, facial nerve neuroma, meningioma, or a Cox mastoiditis or a tuberculous mastoiditis. They are all causes, but the commonest being presence of cholesteatoma. Okay, and you should understand that there is bony labyrinth and also inside the bony labyrinth there is a membranous labyrinth, and this bony labyrinth has got 3 layers, right? Outer layer of periosteum. This is the periosteum. Inner to that there is another layer of endochondral bone. Okay. Endochondral bone. This is the endochondral layer. And inside the endochondral comes the endosteum, right? This is the endosteum. Okay, and all the 3 forms the bony labyrinth, and inside the bony labyrinth there comes the membranous labyrinth. All this anatomy of labyrinth is explained in my earlier classes. If any doubt, you go and see that. Okay, you should see that. Otherwise, you will have confusion. So this is a membranous labyrinth, and outside is a bony labyrinth. And what comes between this membranous inside the membranous labyrinth? Which fluid? That is the endolymph. And between this endolymph, between this membranous labyrinth and the bony labyrinth comes the perilymph. So this is a perilymph. Here comes the perilymph. This is a bony labyrinth, and inside is the endolymph. So here is a perilymph, and this is the endolymph. Okay. Okay. Now it is clear for you, right? Now I told regarding the labyrinthine fistula, I told you about the causes. Then there are types of labyrinthine fistulas. There are two types of classification. One, depending upon the size, and second classification is depending upon the bony defect. Okay, areas involved, bone defect or area of involvement. Okay, involvement, right? So the size classification is given by Sana's classification. Has divided that into small, medium and large defects. So small size, if it is less than 1 millimeter, the defect size of the fistula defect is less than 1 millimeter, is considered as small, and medium if it is between 1 to 2 millimeter, and large is more than 2 millimeter. Okay, that is by Sana's staging, and according to the area of involvement of these layers, divided into 4 types: 1, 2, A and B, and 3, and that is by Dornhofer and Milsky. Okay, so one is Sana's, and second type of classification depending upon the area of defect is by Dornhofer and Milsky. That is to type 1, 2, A and B, and type 3. Okay, so altogether there are 4 types. Dornhofer and Milsky's type 1. The defect or the involvement is up to the endosteum. Endosteum is the innermost layer of the bony labyrinth. So there is involvement up to the endosteum, and endosteum will be intact. Okay, so the involvement is up to the endosteum. Okay, endosteum is intact in type 1. In type 2, endosteum is involved, but the perilymphatic space is not disturbed, right? So it will come like this. Okay, the endosteum is involved, but perilymphatic space is not disturbed. That is type 2A. So this is 1 and this is type 2A. And in type 2B, the perilymphatic space is also disturbed. Okay, so endosteum involvement and also involvement of the perilymphatic space. This is type 2B. And in type 3, what happened? This membranous labyrinth is also affected. Okay, that is type 3. Right? So these are the 4 types. That is type 1 only up to the endosteum. The endosteum is not involved. In type 2A, endosteum is involved, but the perilymphatic space is not affected. In type 2B, the perilymphatic space is also affected, and in type 3, endosteum as well as the membranous labyrinth is affected. So these are the types of fistula according to the size and also according to the area of defect. So we discussed about the causes of labyrinthine fistula and classification of labyrinthine fistula depending upon the size of defect and also the area of involvement of the lesion. And what are the clinical features of a labyrinthine fistula? That is, in most of the cases, the patient will be asymptomatic. If the patient is having a cholecystioma, there will be symptom related to that. Mostly in continuous discharge from the ear, maybe a foul smelling discharge. But the development of labyrinthine fistula as such will not cause much of symptom. Occasionally, there will be periods or transient period of imbalance may or may not be associated with nausea or vomiting. And if you do a fistula test, or if the pressure inside the ear increases, the patient may complain of attacks of vertigo. Okay, and there will be Tullio phenomena will be present. So the one thing you have to know is Tullio phenomena. Okay, what is this Tullio phenomena? That is exposure to loud sound will cause a transient periods of imbalance. Okay, that is it. So that may be present in a case of labyrinthine fistula. So if the patient is asymptomatic, how can you diagnose that? That's the question. High level of suspicion is needed in a patient of, especially with a cholecystioma, if the patient is complaining of Tullio phenomena or a fistula test is positive. Okay, what is this fistula test? That is already explained along with the class on examination of ear. I am not repeating that. You have to know what is fistula test, what are the conditions causing a positive fistula, a false positive fistula, and also a negative fistula sign. That is important. So see that and study. Patient having a sensorineural hearing loss, presence of cholecystioma and transient period of vertigo, you have to confirm the presence of labyrinthine fistula by doing a high resolution CT scan of the temporal bone. That too with the thinnest possible slice. Confirmation is by a high resolution CT scan of the temporal bone with the thinnest cut. Okay. That is needed, and 100% confirmation of the defect is only at the time of surgery. That is, if you are doing a high resolution CT scan with a large cut, thick cuts, then you will miss, there is a chance that you may miss a labyrinthine fistula. In that case, only at the time of surgery, at the table only, you can confirm the presence of labyrinthine fistula. And how will you confirm it at the time of surgery? When you open, you won't see the dome of the semicircular canal, especially the lateral semicircular canal. Okay, or there may be granulation tissue attached to the lateral semicircular canal. Either the absence of the dome of semicircular canal or presence of excessive granulation tissue over the semicircular canal should raise the suspicion of a labyrinthine fistula. The treatment of labyrinthine fistula is always surgical. There is a defect, it has to be closed. Okay. So, and this surgical management depend upon the size of fistula, the site, that is a location, and also the depth of fistula, and also the condition of the opposite ear. Okay, so the site, size, and the depth of fistula, and also condition of the opposite ear. Always the aim of the surgeon is removal of the cholecystioma, that is complete removal of the cholecystioma with the repair of the labyrinthine defect in a single sitting. And if there is only erosions of the bone, the superficial erosion like this, if there is erosion and a cholecystioma is sitting here, you remove the cholecystioma and resurfacing. Okay, this defect is resurfaced. That is resurfacing the defect using bone pat or bone wax. That will be enough. And if there is deeper defects, if the defects are deeper, like this, the removal of the cholecystioma along with the plugging of the defect is needed. How will you plug it? You can plug it with multiple 3 layer or 4 layers. That is, first layer we use a soft tissue or a muscle from the postoral area. Then use bone patties and bone wax, or graft materials can be used. Either a cartilaginous graft or temporalis fascia grafts are used. So multiple layers of graft can be used for that. So for superficial bone erosions, use resurfacing technique only. And for deeper one like this, we have to plug the defect using either with a superficial layers of soft tissue or muscle in the postoral area, or along with that use bone patches or bone wax, and also tragal cartilage, tragal perichondrium, congal cartilage, or temporalis fascia graft. Even after the surgical management of the defect, the fistula sign will remain positive till regrowth of the bone over the defect area. The next is serous labyrinthitis. You have heard of serous otitis media. We had a class on that. Serous otitis media. What is happening there? There is inside the medulla there is collection of clear or sterile fluid. There is no bacterial contamination of the medulla, isn't it? Like that, in a serous labyrinthitis, the inflammation of the labyrinth occurs. There is labyrinthitis, that is inflammation of the labyrinth by the bacterial toxins or the viral toxins, and also inflammatory mediators, host inflammatory mediators like cytokine will penetrate the round window membrane and causes inflammation of the labyrinth. And there is no direct invasion of the bacteria into the inner ear. Okay, so it is comparatively less damageable, or there is no permanent damage to the inner ear, caused as a continuation of acute or chronic otitis media, and also as continuation of labyrinthine fistula, a serous labyrinthitis can happen. Actually, I am repeating, there is no direct bacterial contamination of the inner ear, only the toxic materials or the host inflammatory mediators like cytokine will go through the round window membrane and cause inflammation of the labyrinth. So it occurs as a continuation of labyrinthine fistula, or it can happen as a continuation of acute or chronic otitis media, or after mastoid surgeries or surgeries of the temporal bone, especially stapedectomy or fenestration operation after a blood-borne infection. So the causes are mainly labyrinthine fistula, acute or chronic otitis media, then after surgeries, especially the stapedectomy and fenestration operation, and after blood-borne infections, and also after meningitis. These are the usual causes. It is a transient non-purulent inflammation of the labyrinth which does not cause any permanent damage to the inner ear. And if at all it causes vertigo or sensorineural hearing loss, it is usually irreversible. Usually there occurs, one, there will be a vertigo, right? Vertigo will be there. It is more serious than this labyrinthine fistula, but it's less serious than a suppurative labyrinthitis. So one is vertigo, and I already told this vertigo is completely reversible also. And associated with that will be a sensorineural hearing loss. Okay, and third, there will be nystagmus. To remember this, I will tell you an easy method. Think that if a person standing beside you is irritating you always, what will you do? You will react. You will look towards him and you will react to him, isn't it? But if a person is paralytic, it is sad to see that. Then what will you do? You look away from that. You don't want to see the person who is suffering, right? So in an irritatory lesion, this is an irritatory lesion. So in nystagmus, the fast component of nystagmus is towards the affected ear. So in an irritatory lesion, the nystagmus is towards the affected ear, right? But in case of suppurative labyrinthitis, what will happen? It is a paralytic condition. So the nystagmus will be away, that is away from the affected, that is nystagmus towards the normal ear. So that way you can remember that. So here vertigo, sensorineural hearing loss and nystagmus, and also the caloric test. If you do the caloric test, there will be hypoactivity. So these are the clinical features. If it is due to an acute suppurative otitis media, if the tympanic membrane is seen to be very much bulging, then you go for a wide myrigotomy, take the fluid for culture and sensitivity, and start on antibiotic according to culture and sensitivity if it is acute suppurative otitis media. But if it is due to a chronic otitis media with cholesteatoma, go for a modified radical mastoidectomy and complete removal of the disease. And always you should give a prompt and correct treatment, timely treatment. Then only it will this serous labyrinthitis will stop there and the condition will revert back to normal. Otherwise, it will progress to a suppurative labyrinthitis. Okay. So regarding serous labyrinthitis, it is a non-purulent inflammation of the labyrinth due to bacterial toxins or host immune mediators like cytokine crossing the round window membrane and causing inflammation. It is completely reversible situation, usually associated with an acute or a chronic otitis media or surgeries of the middle ear like a stapedectomy or a fenestration operation. And this vertigo, sensorineural hearing loss and nystagmus are reversible, and timely treatment, whether it is an ASOM, go for a wide myringotomy, or if it is a chronic otitis media, go for a modified radical mastoidectomy, and medicines are important. The third one is the suppurative labyrinthitis. In this case, there is bacterial invasion into the labyrinth. So it is much more serious and complicated than this serous labyrinthitis. There are three routes of infection to the labyrinth. One is a tympanogenic. Tympanogenic, that is infection from the middle ear itself, in which case the causes may be suppurative otitis media, especially a cholesteatoma, or mastoiditis or petrositis, or temporal bone fractures or penetrating injuries into the temporal bone, and also surgeries on mastoid, especially a stapedectomy or a fenestration operation. Or it can be hematogenous. Hematogenous is through bloodstream, the infection coming from adjacent areas like an encephalitis, meningitis, or a temporal lobe abscess. Third, it can be meningogenic. That is from meningitis. So from all these are the causes. That is from the middle ear, I already told it can be a chronic suppurative otitis media, or petrositis, mastoiditis, or temporal bone fractures, or after surgeries, or a serous labyrinthitis. All the causes of serous labyrinthitis, if not treated properly, can progress into a suppurative labyrinthitis. Okay. So these are the mode of infection and also the causes of a suppurative labyrinthitis. Coming to the clinical features of suppurative labyrinthitis, there will be rapid onset of tinnitus, severe vertigo associated with nausea and vomiting, and also pallor and diaphoresis or sweating. And this is so severe that patient will not be able to even to raise the head from bed. And this will not improve with medicines also. This will not respond to any type of medicines for next 8 to 12 hours. After that, compensation occurs, but even slight head movement will induce severe vertigo and nausea. Central nervous system compensation occurs over a period of 2 to 3 weeks. So there will be complete loss of hearing, that is sensorineural hearing loss, which is permanent. Okay. And also there will be nystagmus. What is the direction of this nystagmus? To start with, it is irritative type. So what will happen? This nystagmus will be towards the affected ear for the first day, and after that, after the first day, this will go to the paralytic lesion, so that nystagmus will be towards the normal ear. Usually unilateral suppurative labyrinthitis will be more problematic than a bilateral condition. And what about the treatment? Treatment is similar to that of serous labyrinthitis. That is, you have to give antibiotics if you suspect an infection, especially if it is acute suppurative otitis media or a chronic otitis media. The first one is antibiotic, and second, antivirals if you suspect a viral infection, and then corticosteroids are also needed. Usually a systemic prednisolone is given, and some evidence shows intratympanic injection of steroids also. So anyway, we have to start with antibiotic, antivirals and corticosteroids. Along with that, symptomatic treatment. If there is severe vertigo, ask the patient for advise complete bed rest along with the labyrinthine sedatives for 1 week, and antiemetics if there is severe nausea, and also adequate hydration and symptomatic management. That is regarding labyrinthitis. I discussed about the labyrinthine fistula, the stages of labyrinthine fistula, along with the serous labyrinthitis and suppurative labyrinthitis, the clinical features, investigation of choice and also management. If any doubt, just ask in the comment box. Thank you.